I ask you, are you worthy to be my master?
Okay, so let's just say you wanted to get to this whole Fate series that they call in the Nasuverse. Then you would see all of these shows you're running through, and you're like, this is too much. I don't even know where to start. I'd say, at least for me, I'd start with the 2006 anime adaptations of Fate Stay Night. And the reason why I'm saying that is because it's the adaptation of the visual novel that they first made of it. And it consists basically, in its original form of the visual novel, three routes to each female love interest, as one usually would have in a visual novel. And these three main love interests are named Saber, Rin, and Sakura. Each of the show shows three different routes for Shiro, and of course Shiro's dream of becoming a hero. So I would say start with Fate Stay Night. You'll get the whole gist of what they call the Fifth Holy Grail War is, and who are the seven servants fighting to get the wish. I'm gonna pause and say, well, what is a Holy Grail War? In the Fate franchise, Holy Grail War basically is a fight amongst seven mages and their servants. I'll get into the servants part later. Trying to fight to the death to claim the Holy Grail itself. You know, the Holy Grail that you'd hear in stories and novels and all that. It basically is the wish of all wishes, like Shenron and Dragon Ball. But the only way they'll fight is by summoning through relics known heroic servants slash people from our time, like King Arthur and Hercules, fighting, of course, for their wish as well. They want to get wishes. In this, where they have the fifth Holy Grail War. So in this anime, you're going to be having the fifth war of it. So now you have just watched basically that Fate Stay Night. What would be the next one for you? Watch the prequel. And the reason why I say don't watch it first, even though it is a prequel, it kind of spoils a bit of it, and I want you to stay true to being. If you really wanted to go into it, I would just start with what they released first, which was the 2006 one, and not to mention they kind of spoiled themselves a little bit in the Fate Stay Zero series, so you're gonna get a little bit confused. But say that second, so that now that you watched basically the 2006 one and the 2011 Fate Zero, basing on 2 seasons, and you're hopefully by that time, if you're really starting to love some of the characters that they have servant wise, such as what I mentioned, Saber, who's King Arthur, and King Gilgamesh, who you might know is known as the first hero in history. The next obvious step for someone like you, if you're really starting to like it, is to go right back to Fate Stay Night Unlimited Blade Works. Yeah, that's the name. It runs the same way in the beginning because obviously it's the same story, but like I mentioned earlier, each route follows a love interest. So in this, instead of it being King Arthur's saber, it's Rin with her saber, servant Archer. You will learn a little bit more about the main character that was Shiro in this anime, especially with the servant that Rin has, Archer. It was released basically in the fall of the 2014. It was basically, in my opinion, a step up from its predecessor, and not just in visual, but in storytelling. It basically showed a lot of connection between Rin and Shiro, and what it must be not only how he feels, but in terms of also the struggle of really trying to be a hero in this part of it. So I definitely want you to go and watch this one as well. But now, on to the last route that they have. It's called Fate Stay Night Heaven's Feel. It's the third and final route of the series that you can watch. It's basically split into 3 films following the Sakura route. I'd say in terms of watching it, it is one of the darkest routes out of the 3. And I'd say that the people who created the visuals, Ufotable, or not visuals, but responsible for the Fate series, Ufotable, really truly knocked it out of the park in terms of its animations and its music. Oh, the music is amazing. They really put all of their money straight into those movies. It was really good. But getting sidetracked here, now that you've seen all of the Fate series, you'd say Fate Stay Nights, the Fate Zero. How is, after all, watching this connected to the other pool of things that you're seeing in the quote Nasuverse? Basically, think of it as an alternative universe slash timeline with different outcomes on the Holy Grail War. With this project slash alternative timeline will lead us to the next show that they produced called Fate Apocrypha. This is actually set in a second Holy Grail War. The main difference being, of course, instead of being 7 servants that fight, there are 2 different factions. One red and the other one's black. So you'll get these whole new servants that are in there. That even includes King Arthur's son, Mordred, my personal favorite. And it's definitely a new taste on how they produce the Holy Grail War. So now that you have the Fate series of basically Holy Grail War, you're like, okay, now I'm done with the Holy Grail stuff. War, I get it. Blah blah blah. What are other projects that he's created? Let's see. If you were digging through some of the projects, you'd stumble upon one that has a character, I'd say, named Elia. You see, there's this little thing in here I like to call, at least in this show, a lolly magical girl show called Fate Prisma Elia. It was basically released in 2013. It revolves on yet another alternative timeline onto it. Instead of it being Shiro, the main protagonist in the Holy Grail War, it's Elia becoming a magical girl. If you decided to watch this first, if I say anything and you said to watch this first, you would get really confused at what terms of what's going on. So I'd say just watch this as a side mission if you really wanted to and you're a true fan at this point. But I will not go in deeper into that one for reasons. But now let's kind of go back into another series that they made. It's the same concept of Fate, but instead, it's on the moon. That's right. If you think a reality with 2 factions, or just in general with 7 servants is not enough, then I would say look no further than one called Fate Extra. Basically released in Japan in 2010. It was a video game for PlayStation that took place in yet another parallel universe to the Fate series. It was later, if you wanted to, later made into a manga. Basically, the whole setting plots around you, or is the character, waking up in a virtual world with no recollections of the past, having to fight for survival in this Holy Grail War. You will fight with these brand new servants, and you yourself will get a servant saber named Nero. If you knew who he is, then yes, he's that Nero Claudius, the one who basically ruled over Rome way back when in our time. So if you wanted to switch things up from an anime, I would try this. This was released in the PlayStation eras. They released a whole lot of series, such as Fate CC is the sequel, Fate Extella. There's just a whole lot of it there's not a lot of time to discuss that. But it seems like if you got the gist of the whole Nasu franchise with the anime and games, then I would say go to this in terms of projects. Now, let's take a break here. Obviously, in terms of Nasuverse, he's not going to only just stick to one thing like many authors would. They probably would want to branch off, want to do something else. And you've decided to say, well, let's see what else this person named Nasu has created. What else besides Fate that he wants to make out of his little bargain? I would say enter no further than one series that I love. Called Kara no Kyokai, well in Japanese, but in English it means the Garden of Sinners. One of his early works, this was the first web novel published back in 1998, but then it later turned into a novel in 2004, which they then later adapted into an 8 animated movies by, you guessed it, Ufotable, or maybe not, but it's by Ufotable. If you're intrigued by a genre of basically suspense or mystery, I would say don't look no further than, for me, one of the most best animated visuals slash musical composition that you would feel as if you're part of this world, with its stunning colorings, with the warms and the cold colorings, making it really pop. It revolves, instead of our main protagonist Shiro, it revolves around Ryogi Shiki, a female character who works for an agency that specializes in the supernatural and abnormal. You'll become basically intrigued by her split personalities that she has. She has two of them. They even get a love interest as well by our main lead as well, named Mikaya. It's definitely find a time to watch these movies. There are 8 of them, plus a special. They were kind of released out of order, so even though if it says 1, it's not really 1 that's in order. I would suggest starting from the second movie, then 4th, 3rd, and then they had one, I have no idea how to say, but it's Mirai Fukuin, I'm guessing. And then 1, then 5, 6, 7, and then 8. And if you wanted to feel a little more extra into it, they have an extra story called Extra Chorus. So definitely give that a shot. In terms of the movies, I kind of watched it in two days, so it was really good. But getting sidetracked here on that project, we'll mention that in terms of one of the last projects he made, aside from the Garden of Sinners, you should watch one called Tsukihime. It was made as a doujin back in 2000. It was later adapted in 2003 into an anime, 12 episodes. It was produced by JC Staff, and straying away from the main character Shiro, it follows another male lead character named Shiki Tono. For him, he basically suffered a fatal injury that resulted in him seeing what they called death lines on objects and people. So basically, it's any objects he sees, he can cut straight through it and it will just break immediately without breaking a sweat. And instead of our blonde-haired protagonist female Saber, you will get yet another blonde-haired female protagonist named Arcade. She's a vampire princess who is called the True Ancestor. Now, considering on this one that this was made in the early 2000s, the animations is, at least to me, okay for the time, but it surely is something you should watch if you want to know the whole pool of content that he's created in terms of the Nasuverse. Now, I wanted to talk lastly about this project of Fate that's still currently going on. It will make you truly love the Fate series, and if you really do love and you wanted to get more into it, this project in particular, it's not an anime or a manga or even a visual novel. It's a mobile game, and it's called Fate Grand Order. Now, hear me out, in terms of mobile games, I know you can probably say like Angry Birds or anything like that, but this, regardless of the whole fan service and gotchas that they provide, it has one of the deepest storyline that trails every single one of the projects that I've mentioned into a one connected universe slash story. It was originally released in Japan in 2015. We got it later on, 2 years later in 2017. It became one of the 6th highest grossing mobile game. It's a turn RPG with visual novel style like story segments. It brings all of that servants you've loved in the anime plus this project into playable characters that you can summon. The story is simply put in the beginning 7 human histories, so it's basically just timelines that are being branched off in normal history that are very different. If you're interested in things that are like end of the world type things and you have to go in and stop it from ending, then I would say play this game in terms of story wise. If you wanted to breeze through it, and if you also love RPG turn-based games, definitely give it a try. It's definitely a must-have. It's not like it is a pay if you want to pay for servants, but it's a free-to-play for your Androids and Apple, so definitely give that a shot. But now, that's basically all I got in terms of Fate series. There are some other projects in terms of Fate that they had. Fate Strange Fate, that's Marvel. They had Fate. Actually, there's Fate Strange Fate that came into an anime, so if you wanted to watch that, you're more than welcome to. There are a couple of other projects that he's had, but I'd say for now, the ones I've mentioned, definitely give those a try in those order. Um, but I wanted to thank you all, basically, in terms of listening through this whole ramble that I have in terms of what to watch first for the Fate series. Um, Thank you for listening. You have a good morning, good afternoon, and good night.